They mocked the black janitor until she fired the CEO in front of everyone. They sneered at her mop, ignored her name, treated her like a ghost, until one night she walked into the boardroom, dropped a folder on the table, and fired the CEO. No one saw it coming, but she had planned it all along. Every evening at 9 p.m., Nia Thompson pushed her mop bucket through the gleaming glass doors of Pinnacle Innovations, a billion-dollar tech company that barely registered her existence. In her gray janitor's uniform, hair tied back, badge in place, she was part of the building's scenery, essential but never acknowledged. Executives talked over her, laughed around her, passed by without a second glance. Some called her Sweetie or Girl, never bothering to read her name. To them, she was a shadow, a ghost who scrubbed scuff marks off their marble floors before sunrise. But Nia wasn't invisible. She watched, listened, documented, and remembered. Behind her, silence was a mind sharper than most of the suits in the building. She held a master's degree in finance, had once written market reports, waited tables, and understood systems in ways they couldn't imagine. They saw a janitor. They didn't see the woman who had once topped her class, or the daughter of a loyal employee they'd discarded without a thought. Nia didn't need applause or attention. What she carried was quieter, deeper, and far more dangerous. While they looked past her, she was already a step ahead, building something powerful in the shadows. Nia's purpose wasn't born of ambition, it was born of loss. Her mother, Evelyn Carter, had worked at Pinnacle Innovations for nearly 3 decades. A woman of quiet dignity, Evelyn scrubbed floors, polished glass, and ensured executives entered spotless boardrooms they never questioned. She never missed a shift, never complained. She wore her uniform with pride and carried herself with grace. But when she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, Pinnacle offered no sick leave, no health insurance, no support, just a cold offer. She could retire if she needed to. Evelyn passed away in a cramped 2-bedroom duplex, surrounded not by colleagues or care, but by silence. No funeral assistance, no thank you, just a final paycheck of $480. That was Pinnacle's valuation of her years of loyalty. Nia remembered every detail, especially the company email noting her mother's status change. It wasn't just a loss, it was an erasure, and Nia refused to let it be the end of her mother's story. She returned to Pinnacle not with a resume or a suit, but with a plan. Using her middle name and an old address, she applied for a janitor's job. No one asked about her education, and she didn't volunteer it. They hired her after one interview. To them, she was just another janitor. To her, it was a mission, not about revenge, but about truth. Evelyn had taught her that clean work was honest work, but also to learn how to earn, study systems, and know who truly held power. Nia listened. Now, in the same corridors where her mother once moved unnoticed, she moved with quiet intent. She wasn't there to be seen. She was there to remember. Every late shift, every whispered insult, every smirk or dismissive glance fueled a fire that had nothing to do with pride. It was about purpose. For Nia, justice didn't come through rage. It came through focus, through honoring a legacy too easily forgotten. In the shadows where Pinnacle buried Evelyn Carter's memory, her daughter returned to ensure no one would ever forget her name again. Nia didn't fight with noise. She fought with knowledge. While Pinnacle's executives passed her without a thought, she paid attention. Every conversation echoing through hallways after hours. Every carelessly tossed document in an office trash can. Every smug remark about layoffs or unpaid bonuses. She absorbed it all. Her silence wasn't submission, it was observation. Every night after clocking in, she followed her rhythm: vacuum, trash cans, desks, floors. But as she moved through the building like a ghost, she built a plan with precision. For months, she tracked arrogant junior VP Marcus Reed, logging his financial missteps, collecting receipts, and noting every careless comment that revealed his recklessness. She overheard Karen Whitmore, head of legal strong-arming lower-tier staff, and quietly added her to the list. Every name, habit, and policy change that harmed workers was recorded in a master file she called the Truth Ledger. Naya wasn't reckless. She backed everything up. 3 cloud drives, encrypted, dated, organized. This wasn't for gossip, it was for leverage. She built relationships with people like her, the unseen. The parking lot attendant, the night shift cafeteria workers, and Javier, the security guard. They shared stories, tips, warnings. When Javier once joked, "They don't see us. We could be planning a heist," Nia calmly replied, "Not a heist, something better." Behind that calm was a relentless mind. During breaks, she read investment blogs and studied corporate structures on her phone. She wasn't just collecting data. She was deliberately, quietly amassing power. One night, she found a torn itinerary in the trash. A lavish Miami trip labeled Strategic Development. She didn't take the paper, she photographed it. Another night, she overheard 2 executives laughing about outsourcing departments, sipping smoothies. No loyalty, they joked. Nia kept filling in the blanks, speaker notes, meeting logs. They thought she was invisible. But she was documenting the truth, one line at a time. Because Naya knew one thing for sure. You can't beat a system you don't understand. But once you do, you don't need to shout to dismantle it. You just need to outsmart it. And that's what she did. Night after night, floor by floor, while Pinnacle's executives spent days in corner offices and nights sipping cocktails at company-funded events, Naya quietly built something more powerful than influence. Ownership. Using every spare dollar from multiple jobs, she started buying Pinnacle stock. First pennies, then dollars, then thousands. She didn't make noise. She made moves. It wasn't just about money. It was about voice. Naya understood the system inside out. She knew how voting shares worked, how proxy votes were often ignored by absent shareholders, and how corporate power could shift not by volume but by numbers on paper. So she began reaching out, carefully, quietly. She emailed former employees, ousted partners, anyone left behind by Pinnacle's machine. She didn't pose as a whistleblower, just a janitor with questions. And that was the genius of her approach. They underestimated her before she typed a word. Some ignored her, but others listened, especially those who'd been silenced. A former research lead forced into early retirement, a startup founder whose company was acquired and gutted, even a former intern turned blogger who gave her his micro share. Because, as he said, "You're the only one who cares." Bit by bit, Nia collected proxies. At first, it didn't seem like much, but over a year, she quietly amassed influence over nearly 12% of the company's voting shares. Legally, it was power. Strategically, it was enough to shake the board. But she stayed invisible. She kept scrubbing floors, emptying trash, smiling politely when dismissed, all while carrying the momentum of something seismic. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about making a statement when it mattered most, and that moment was coming. When the new CEO, Nathan Caldwell, arrived like a storm, slashing jobs, cutting benefits, preaching efficiency as the new gospel, Naya's name appeared on a layoff list. It wasn't a shock. She felt it was timely, perfectly timely. She had the proxies. She had the evidence. And most importantly, she had something no executive expected: the power of someone who didn't climb the ladder, but quietly built her own. When the call came, It was almost anticlimactic. A low-level HR rep reading a script told Nia her position was eliminated effective Friday. 1 week's severance, final paycheck, no apologies, no explanation, just another name quietly erased from Pinnacle's system. But Nia didn't cry. She didn't argue. She hung up and stood in the Arizona heat behind the building, sun blazing. Her face was unreadable because, unlike the executives who thought they'd shed dead weight, she knew the truth. They hadn't buried her. They'd freed her hand. By Friday, Nia had everything in place. Dressed not in her janitor's uniform but in a black blazer and sneakers, she walked into Pinnacle's boardroom at 5:55 p.m., just before the meeting started. Her badge still worked, thanks to Javier, the security guard who'd become her quiet ally. Interim CEO Nathan Caldwell was mid-sentence, boasting to the board about trimming the bottom to keep the top afloat. Then he saw her. "Can I help you? This is a closed meeting," he said, irritation creeping into his voice. Nia didn't flinch. "I'm here as a shareholder," she said calmly, placing a folder on the table. "And I'm presenting this." Inside was a motion to remove the CEO, complete with legal documentation, financial evidence, and proxy support from shareholders who, like her, had been pushed aside. For a moment, the room froze. Then a quiet murmur rippled through the board as hands went up, members confirming they'd given her their votes. Nathan's face reddened. His voice rose. "This is absurd. She cleans toilets." Nia stepped forward. "I clean what's dirty, and right now that includes this board." She was quiet. She didn't raise her voice, but every word landed like a hammer. Nathan scrambled for control, calling her stunt a joke, dismissing the documents, but it was too late. She had the votes, the evidence, the support. "This is a stunt," Nathan hissed. No board member responded, flipping through their packets. "This is accountability," Nia said, steady. "I'm not a spectacle. I'm here to remind you who this company belongs to. You forgot the people who hold it up. The ones you fired, ignored, walked past. One by one, the board voted, and one by one, the power Nathan once held slipped through his fingers. In the end, he wasn't just fired. He was replaced by a story far more powerful than quarterly profits or PR moves. A janitor with a memory, a mission, and a folder full of receipts. Because Nia didn't come for revenge. She came for truth. And this time, the whole room had to listen. The fallout from that boardroom showdown shook Pinnacle. The next morning, Nia walked through the company's front doors, not as an employee, not as a guest, but as a force of change. She wore the same gray janitor's uniform she'd been fired in, not for symbolism, but for truth, because this victory wasn't about appearances, it was about accountability. Rumors spread fast, staff whispered, executives stared, but no one dared dismiss her now. Days later, an official company-wide email signed by the board hit every inbox. Change begins with recognizing the people who lay the foundation. They weren't just words. Action followed. The executive bar budget was slashed. Funds were redirected to improve healthcare and training programs for lower-tier employees. Layoffs were frozen. Policies were revisited. Then something unexpected happened. Pinnacle's PR department was renamed the Evelyn Carter Tribute in memory of Nia's mother. The logo was simple, her name in gold lettering on a navy background. Nia hadn't asked for it, but when she saw it, she quietly stepped into a restroom and let herself cry for 5 minutes. Not from sadness, but from the simple, overwhelming feeling that it finally mattered. Because now the company didn't just see her, they remembered her mother. And for the first time in years, something at Pinnacle was cleaned and made right. Despite the board's offer of a formal leadership role, Naya declined twice. She didn't need a title, an office, or her name on a glass door. "I want to keep showing up at 9 most p.m., she told them. "For now, at least." To some, it seemed a waste of talent, but for Naya, true power wasn't in climbing the ladder. It was in guarding the foundation so no one else fell through. She kept her routine quiet, focused, real, not to prove anything, but to ensure what changed, stayed changed. She walked the building not as a janitor, not as a CEO killer, but as a reminder that respect isn't a reward. It's a right. And those who build quietly in the dark might one day turn the whole system upside down. Her final words to the board said it best. "If anyone calls a janitor deadweight again, you'd better believe they'll be next." In a world where value is still measured by titles and corner offices, Nia redefined leadership. She showed that those overlooked are often the only ones who care enough to fix what's broken. And as Pinnacle slowly rebuilt from within, it did so under the quiet watch of a woman who chose not to shout for justice, but to become it. As we grow older, we see more clearly what truly matters. Honor the integrity and courage to do what's right, even when no one's watching. Naya's story isn't just about exposing a corrupt CEO. It's about respecting quiet work, unseen sacrifice, and the deep-rooted dignity passed down through generations. Her mother gave nearly 3 decades to a company that forgot her name the moment she fell ill. But Nia wouldn't let that be the end of Evelyn Carter's story. She rose not out of anger, but with purpose. For many older Americans who worked hard, raised families, and were forgotten despite their contributions, this story resonates. It reminds us that strength doesn't always come from loud voices or big titles. Sometimes it comes from those who scrub floors, who listen, who pay attention, and then act wisely. The lesson: never underestimate the quiet ones, and never forget that the foundation of every strong community, every lasting company, every true legacy is laid by people who show up day after day with pride and principle. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like it, share it with someone who needs it, and follow for more powerful stories that remind us quiet strength can change everything.